All right, so we're diving deep today into Noli Me Tangere.
Yeah.
But, and you know this already, we're not just skimming the surface. We're going deep. You chose Doña Victorina and Don Tiburcio. That's what we're focusing on. And let's face it, they're a couple that, well, might make you laugh a little at first. Right?
Yeah, that's Rizal's genius. He gets you with that humor, but there's so much more there. Underneath all that satire, he's really digging into some huge societal problems in the Philippines, under Spanish rule at the time.
Yeah. So think about this. It's the late 1800s in the Philippines, and the country's really struggling under colonial rule. It's a tough time. And Rizal's holding up this mirror, right,
Yeah.
to Filipino society. He's showing everybody the problems, exposing those cracks. And these two characters, they're smack dab in the middle of it all.
They're almost like these exaggerated figures. Like you could have met them back then walking down the street. You know what I mean? And through those characters, Rizal gives us this really unique view into how colonialism messes with people's minds, especially like how it affects their identity.
Okay, so let's start with Doña Victorina. She's obsessed with everything European. I mean, everything. Clothes, how she acts, even she puts makeup on her face to try to lighten her skin. I mean, it's almost hard to watch, but I feel like Rizal wanted us to look deeper, beyond just the funny stuff.
Oh, for sure. Imagine feeling so ashamed of where you come from that you try to, erase it from your face. Literally. That's what she's dealing with. She's like the poster child for internalized colonialism, as they call it. Like, she's convinced that Europe is the best and anything Filipino is, I don't know, less than.
So she's not just following the trends. It's deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's like she needs that acceptance.
Yeah.
From the colonizers. Validation, I guess you'd call it.
Exactly. And that need, that desire for validation, it controls everything she does, like even who she picks to marry. And that brings us to Don Tiburcio. Spanish, yeah. But not really what you call a high society guy. Not what she was hoping for, probably.
He's a doctor, but I'm using that term loosely. More like a quack, really.
Yeah.
Selling these fake remedies. It makes you wonder about, healthcare back then in the Philippines, right? What was that like?
Oh, it says a lot about how colonialism put profits before, actually helping people. Don Tiburcio, he's incompetent, but he's Spanish, so he's seen as the expert. His supposed expertise trumps actual skill. And, well, he takes advantage of people needing to get better.
Almost like Rizal's warning us about fake news way back in the 1800s. But Don Tiburcio, he's stuck, right, in this loveless marriage, just business. Is he another victim of this whole system?
He's a really interesting case. He's both a victim and a, perpetrator. On the one hand, yeah, he benefits from the system. It values being European, even if it's all fake. But he's obviously not happy. He's just a piece in Doña Victorina's game to climb the social ladder.
They're always fighting, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, Doña Victorina puts him down all the time, trying to be the one in charge. But you can tell it's because she's insecure deep down.
Yeah, and it reflects that bigger power imbalance in the Philippines back then. Women, even ones like her, trying to act European, they weren't given real power. Stuck in this patriarchal system, no real control, so they're always wanting something more, always reaching.
And then, well, he leaves her. Don Tiburcio, he gets out. It's funny, but, I kind of feel bad for him. He's like this bird stuck in a cage who finally gets free. Even though it's messy, it's chaotic.
His escape, yeah, it's funny. But it also says something about wanting to be free from this system. Like, even in this rigid structure, there's always this little bit of hope. Like, people always want to break free and make their own way.
It's wild how these two characters, who you could easily write off as jokes, actually show us so much about what it means to be human. They're messed up, they're funny, but you can relate to them, I think.
That's what Riel does. He takes these larger-than-life personalities and uses them to show us truths about who we are, about power and love, stuff that still matters today,
So why should we care? I mean, it's just this couple arguing in a book from over 100 years ago, right?
Yeah, because it's like our own struggles, isn't it? Like, we all want to fit in, to be accepted, and we're all trying to find our place in a world that sometimes tells us we aren't good enough. Think about it. Like, have you ever felt like you had to be a certain way to fit in, to be successful, or like you needed other people to tell you you're good enough?
It's tough, right?
Yeah.
Especially now with, social media. Always these perfect pictures, perfect lives. Makes you wonder if we're really any different from Doña Victorina, still chasing that validation.
And that's the thing about colonialism. It gets in your head, makes you doubt yourself, makes you question your own worth. And that sticks with you even generations later. Doña Victorina and her obsession with, European beauty standards, it's just one way that shows up.
And Don Tiburcio, right, with his bogus medicine. It's almost funny, but it also shows how colonialism often rewarded incompetence. as long as it looked European, I guess.
Exactly. It's like Rizal's making fun of that whole system, where just appearing to be an expert is more important than actually knowing what you're doing. Makes you think, how many Don Tiburcios were out there taking advantage of people because they were seen as, I don't know, superior just because they were European?
It's a good reminder to, like, think critically, not just believe everything you hear,
Yeah.
especially from people in charge.
That's so important, not just for history, but for like everyday life. There's so much information out there, so many experts, got to figure out what's real and what's not.
And Riesel, he didn't shy away from criticizing the church either. He saw it as part of the problem, like involved in exploiting Filipinos.
Yeah, the friar estates are a perfect example. Huge pieces of land, basically the heart of the Philippines, controlled by Spanish friars, not Filipinos. It wasn't just about money either. It was about controlling everything. Society,
Yeah.
politics.
And some of those friars living these lavish lifestyles kind of goes against that whole poverty thing, right? Riesel definitely called them out on that.
Yeah, he's basically saying, look, they're not what they pretend to be. He's showing how power hungry they were, hiding behind religion.
But Don Tiburcio, he's not just a victim. Makes you wonder, how often did colonialism reward incompetence? I mean, people went to him because he was Spanish, not because he was any good.
It's messed up, right? Colonialism made people think that being European automatically meant you were better. So guys like Don Tiburcio, they could succeed even if they were terrible at their jobs.
Let's go back to Doña Victorina and Don Tiburcio for a sec. It's funny to see them fight and try to control each other, but it's also kind of sad, like they're stuck and they can't get out.
Their whole dynamic shows how little power women had back then. Doña Victorina, she tries so hard to be in control, but she's trapped. The system's against her. Marrying Don Tiburcio, it was supposed to make her life better, but it just made things worse.
Like she's trying to win a game that's rigged. No matter what she does, she can't come out on top.
It shows how colonialism messed with people's lives in so many ways, especially for women. They didn't have a lot of choices, and society told them what they could and couldn't do.
Doña Victorina is always on Don Tiburcio's case, trying to change him into the perfect European husband. But he never does what she wants. Like he's rebelling against her, trying to make him more European.
Even if he wasn't doing it on purpose, it shows how people resisted those outside influences. Like, even with all his flaws, Don Tiburcio was holding on to some part of himself.
It makes you realize that even in oppressive systems, people always find ways to resist. Even if it's just a little bit, they don't want to be completely taken over. Doña Victorina and Don Tiburcio, they show how complicated it was to live under colonial rule, even in their messed up relationship.
It reminds us that colonialism wasn't just about controlling land and resources. It was about controlling how people think and feel, how they see beauty, success, even love.
And those ideas stick around. Even after the colonizers leave, they can still affect us in ways we don't even realize.
So going forward, let's learn from these characters, even the funny ones. Let's pay attention to the stories we're told, question who's really in control, and try to be our true selves, not what someone else tells us to be.
You know, it's really something how Riesel takes these characters, Doña Victorina, Don Tiburcio, and uses them to talk about these huge problems. It's like they're showing us exactly where the problems are in this colonial system.
He was amazing at satire. Like, you're laughing one minute and then the next you're thinking about like human nature and what it means to be oppressed.
And we can't forget about the church, right? I mean, it's a big part of Noli Tangere. And Riesel doesn't hold back.
No, he doesn't. He paints this picture of the church as like completely mixed up with the colonial government. Like they're working together to exploit the Filipino people.
Those friar estates, right?
Yeah.
We talked about them earlier. They got all that land, and it wasn't always fair how they did it. It gave them so much power, not just money, but control over everything.
And then there's how some of those friars lived, all fancy and rich. Doesn't really match up with that whole poverty thing they're supposed to be about. Riesel really lays into that.
He's basically saying, look, they're not who you think they are. He's pulling back the curtain and showing everyone how they're just after power.
Yeah, and it makes people question the church, you know? Like, can they really be trusted? Especially when they're acting like part of the colonial machine. But it's important to remember, Riesel wasn't attacking faith itself. He was going after the institution, how it was being used to keep this unfair system going.
He wanted the church to change, to actually help people instead of siding with the colonizers.
And a lot of Filipinos felt the same way. That's part of why Noli Tangere was so important. It gave them a voice, made them think about how things could be different.
It's wild how a book can spark a revolution.
Right.
But let's get back to Doña Victorina and Don Tiburcio. Their relationship, it's funny, but it also makes you think about the position of women back then.
Yeah, they didn't have much power, did they?
Not at all. Doña Victorina, she wanted to be in control, but the system was against her. Marrying Don Tiburcio, it was supposed to help her, but it backfired.
She was playing a game she couldn't win, no matter what she did.
Exactly. It shows how colonialism affected everything, not just politics and economics, but even people's personal lives, especially women. Society told them what they could be, who they could be, and it wasn't much.
It makes you think about how we still need to fight for equality today, to make sure everyone has a chance, has choices.
So as we wrap this up, what do you hope people will take away from this deep dive?
I think the biggest thing is that even though this is a story from a long time ago, it still matters today. Doña Victorina and Don Tiburcio, they show us that the things people struggle with, identity, power, love, those things are always there.
In colonialism, it can stick around in ways we don't even realize. It can affect how we see ourselves and how we see the world.
We have to be aware of that, and we have to challenge those ideas. We should all have the chance to be who we are without being controlled by the past.
So, to everyone listening, what parts of their story resonated with you? How do their struggles connect to your own life, to what's happening in the world today? Think about it. It's a conversation worth having.